All right. Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to our webinar. Today's topic is IoT for operational excellence. We're going to share stories of successful integration, plus some perspectives from people who are peers of yours. Our speakers, we have a busy panel today, even though we have, unfortunately, a couple of speakers who couldn't join due to last-minute constraints, but we have 5 speakers whom I'm going to present right now. Just a quick note to thank CESA Systems and Kalima Systems and Triana Group to be partners on this webinar. Hopefully you are hearing me well enough. If you have any questions or issues, feel free to enter a Q&A. You should see on the bottom of your screen or the right side of your screen a Q&A icon. Hector comes with 20 years of professional development, project development engineering experience. He's been a production and facilities engineering manager in large companies, including Shell, Cargill. He's led lean transformation projects. He's the founder of Lean TPS, which stands for Lean Technical and Project Management Solutions. He's an engineer, Lean Six Sigma Black Belt. John is a very active evangelist in the smart factories space. He's led the business development of a German Industry 4.0 software company, you could say. He's actually helped raise the awareness of the American manufacturing sector regarding IoT, especially, and generally digital transformation. He's been a speaker in numerous industry conferences. Mitch brings 20 years of experience in engineering and management positions. He's been an engineer. I mean, I think it's the first time I have, I guess I could say, a rocket scientist, right? He's worked at NASA, Boeing, and he's now at Altec. He'll probably tell us a few words about that. He's an MIT and Harvard graduate. Norm is a product manager. He's worked in a very interesting startup that is a startup within a global logistics company, where he was involved in the deployment of an IoT solution worldwide. 500 million pallets, I think, that they were tracking. So very interesting. He also shares an experience in multiple functional areas. He also has a background both in computer science, technical, and business. Ruby is with Con Edison, which is the 7th largest utility in the United States. She's currently working in the area of energy efficiency programs and looking at technology solutions that help to enhance operations. She's a graduate from the NYU Tandon School of Engineering. Without further ado, I'm going to start with the first question to you, John. So you've been involved in really, like I said, for 7 years, making the National Association of Manufacturers really much more involved in IoT and digital transformation. Could you tell us about, how do you define industrial IoT, and especially how should our audience, who are mostly plant managers and industrial engineers, really involved in operations, industrial operations, what should they know about IoT, and why is it important?
First of all, I'd like to say how honored I am to be with such a distinguished group of panelists. I'm humbled by your qualifications and your education. Thank you for including me. Thank you, Jabrin. I've been at this longer than 7 years, but I have lived through in the past 10 years a complete revolution in the focus of attention with two manufacturers. When I started, we were very focused on OEE, MES functionality. That was really the focus of everybody's attention. What we've seen over the past 7 years is another revolution, which it doesn't preclude MES, but what it does, what's happened now with the industry is that we've come up with what we call a suite of industrial Internet of Things platforms, so that it's not just MES, it's not just OEE, because the manufacturers, from what we can see, were demanding more functionality. So what we've come up with, we've stripped down most of the technology and rebuilt it again in order to include a platform which not only gets MDC wirelessly and immediately, but also then enables us to communicate with any ERP system, and then adds to it different types of functionality according to what is needed by the client. It could be predictive analytics, it could be dynamic scheduling, it could be quality, it could be track and trace. So we've got we're going through another revolution, and so I'm in the middle of it right now. So I just thought I would bring that to your attention. For those of you who heard this sermon 10 years ago, it was very focused on OEE. But one guy's KPIs is not another guy's KPIs, which we've discovered. And if you're a solution-based organization, you're going to listen attentively to what your clients need. And that's what we've done in the industry, is try to respond.
Great, excellent. Interesting to see this transition, so from OEE to a broader scope, basically, right?
That's what we've seen, and it will continue to evolve as we get into AI and deep learning with machine. That again will produce another set of KPIs that people will want to latch onto. But again, I want to repeat that it's very important for people in the software industry, I believe, to listen to what their clients need and to then come up with a solution. That's really what it is. It's not about selling the software that somebody's invested in. It's about, can we help you? Can we help you solve a problem?
Right. Yeah. And you're glad you mentioned the AI IoT as well. Hopefully we'll have a chance to talk about that again, because it's coming up as well. So, Will, I was going to ask you a question about the cybersecurity part. We'll talk about it probably a bit later again, but could you touch briefly on that? Did you see any concern, perhaps at the association level or from manufacturers, regarding the cybersecurity aspect of IoT?
The answer to your question is, particularly when it relates to the defense industry, any software company that's worth its salt has got ITAR accreditation going in, or you couldn't possibly do business with Lockheed or Bombardier or any of the aerospace companies. So again, it is not the purview of most software companies to provide the solution for cybersecurity problems. What is required is that the software is compatible with the regulations or with the purveyor of the cybersecurity software. That's, I think, where we are right now. In other words, we don't want to tell our clients what they need to do from a regulation standpoint. That they must tell us.
Got it. Okay, thank you. So we'll get back to you a bit later. I have a next question for Norm. So the question is, Norm, you've worked in a startup within a large global company where they own, I think, hundreds of millions of pallets. You help to digitize the, I guess, kind of the management of those assets, right? It's a specific type of assets, but they are assets worldwide. So whether our audience are really interested in the supply chain part or not, I don't think really that should be a concern, because it's simply like a great blueprint of how does a company approach IoT and integrate it really in a massive manner to create value. So can you tell us about how did you approach IoT? How did you build it from the ground up? Of course, anything you can share. what the rationale was for that, any technical, let's say, considerations related to building such a system, and then finally, and I guess mostly that's where you were involved as well, is all that data that suddenly you're able to produce. How do you create value from it?
Sure. I hope everyone can hear me. First,
Yes.
thank you for having me. And yeah, to answer, I guess there's a number of questions you asked, but to answer, I think part of the first question was, perhaps how did we go about building the IoT system? So first, I'll say that just to reiterate to people, I was product manager, and I had an opportunity to work on a SaaS IoT solution for supply chain in particular from the ground up. So with any type of system that you're going to launch, it's a significant undertaking for, think of a traditional company that does logistics, for example. It's a significant undertaking for them to go from their core business into building and maintaining and using connected devices, IoT devices. So for us, we are actually a startup within a larger company, a parent organization. So that allowed us to have, I guess I'll say, maybe more of a better focus, because we were able to carve that out and build that portion of it with the knowing and the knowledge that we had the backing of a larger company. So first, I'll say also that there's always the build or buy question. One needs to consider so many different factors when you're talking about internal, external, factors to whether you actually want to do something like this. In our case, it was, again, a SaaS solution. So you really need to look at, what are your goals to doing this? What are your core competencies as a company? What type of time, budget, overall market environment that you're in, to name a few things. So we essentially chose to build our own integrated system from the physical devices, including firmware. Using them, we had an edge embedded hardware team. We also built the cloud infrastructure and platform all the way to the web mobile apps. And to clarify, we didn't actually build the cloud platform. We enlisted the help of cloud service providers to fill in the gaps, but we did build certain systems to help, launch basically our IoT system. So we use various, and I'll throw out some terminology here. I'm not really sure for the audience how much you're aware, so forgive me if I'm telling you something you already know. And if you haven't heard this, I'm trying to say it slow enough where you can pick up on certain things. So we took advantage of various infrastructure as a service things to help build our servers and storage and networking. But we also worked on a PaaS system, a platform as a service system, to build our middleware OS. And ultimately, our product was a SaaS product, right? So which is basically it's a software as a service. It's on demand. You log in, and you can log in through a web app or mobile app to access our product. So that's just to answer kind of how we built the system from the ground up. Is that I don't want to go down too much of a rabbit hole.
Sure.
Does that kind of answer?
Yeah. Absolutely, and we I'll mention that again, but we'll also have other webinars focused even more on the technical aspects. So this is great as an intro, and for those who would like, and of course yourself as well, we will have hopefully chances to talk more about really very concrete steps. So that led to generation of I guess I don't know how much data, but probably a lot, right, of data, and you're able to now analyze data. So how does that create value? What kind of data?
Right.
And how, yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, that's right. So with any IoT system, you can be inundated with more data than you ever imagined that you thought you would have or would need. So I think that's when you go back to the rationale, going back to the goals of why you're doing it, you really need to figure out not only the build or buy scenario, but what is the right the right solution that you're looking for. And part of that is when you're talking about what it is that you're trying to do. some people would just buy devices off the shelf and kind of put it next to their platform because they only want to be participants in one very particular aspect. In our case, again, we built everything from the ground up. So going to answer your question about what it is that we're looking for, first I'll say when you think about the data, you need to have some very key questions you should ask yourself. What are the goals? What kind of data you're looking for? How do you plan to leverage that information? And ultimately, how you're able to sustain a suitable return. Because in our case, we were a startup within a larger company, and we had to show return on investment and return on equity for what we were spending. For track and trace, we really wanted to look at the insights on the trips that the assets took. So think about metrics on terms of duration, frequency, location, those sort of things. But maybe what might be more useful, and I think the previous panelist, John, I think he spoke to this, would be to perhaps just kind of real briefly explain the type of analytics that we were after, even for a track and trace supply chain solution. So basically three things that we were really looking at and really after. They're the descriptive analytics, predictive analytics, and prescriptive analytics. So descriptive analytics are basically, when we were looking at it, it's basically the most basic form of insights. You're looking at all this information. These devices are feeding you all this information, and you're able to basically do simple calculations like mean, standard deviation, those type of things. It helps you kind of assess a little bit of what happened, maybe why it happened in some cases. But think of an example as, for example, the average time it took your asset to go through a cycle in the field. So that's descriptive. And when you think about predictive, you're really trying to kind of model maybe future data and behaviors by analyzing some of that data that you're looking at originally in the descriptive field. So in this case, it might be a statistical or some sort of model that you're applying to see when, how much cycle time, your assets in the field. Let's say it goes up by 20%, and then you're trying to figure out, what kind of predictive maintenance, you might need. People on the call who are managing plants or any type of industrial factories, you guys already probably know that. Then the third item really is, prescriptive analytics. It goes a little step further in helping to provide analyses to maybe optimize and provide a recommendation. So to take the same example, you would, in order to maximize your asset life after it went out in the field, and you want to minimize repair intervals, you want to look at, how many times perhaps it can go through a cycle before, you really need to get some preventive maintenance scheduled. So that's a way to optimize your assets overall. And again, this is strictly from a track and trace and supply chain perspective, but trying to explain it in a way that is applicable in terms of the type of analytics that can be used for any type of IoT system.
Great. Yeah, absolutely. And I like this descriptive, predictive, and prescriptive sequence. And sounds like it's and knowing ahead of time what information you need and why you need it and how you're going to benefit from it, and having that roadmap, that sense of what you're going to be able to do in the future, projecting yourself, not just gathering data or simple analytics, but the prescription as well is very interesting. It touches on the AI. Again, we will hopefully come back to this question later. Thank you so much, Norm. So the next question is for Mitch. And so Mitch, I think all of us have seen your equipment or the equipment that your company manufactures. It's across all the streets of the United States, I think, and probably way beyond that. There's trucks with telescopic cranes, I think, that are used by telecom companies, utility companies, and probably many more. So if you could tell us how you have approached IoT, and I think it's interesting because again, whether our audience are manufacturing trucks or users of trucks or not, it's more how can you integrate IoT into an equipment and then create value and help your users as well generate new value. So could you talk about that?
Sure, absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you so much again for the honor of being on the panel, and I'll echo what John said. It's it's great to be among this panel, and I think ComEd being one of our customers and John being from a group that we're a member of. So it's a great honor to be here. So when LTech was thinking about this, as John said, and I absolutely believe him that he's been in it for decades, even I'll say 15, 20 years ago, LTech was thinking about connectivity, and the term in the space, telematics is a common term. And there were some initiatives back then, but to John's point about, 7 years ago is when things really started to be revolutionary, and given advancements in processing and cellular communications and everything else, that's when everything really started going. And so LTech has been at it for a while, but more recently really getting involved into it. And I'll say when it comes to IoT, there's almost two paths of how LTech is involved. The Industrial IoT, which is our factories, the products that we're making, our factories themselves being connected, and then our products and what our customers are looking for. And we've seen some good gains within our factories from just connecting up our equipment and our machines in the factory to see what kind of utilization they have and things like that. We've put quite a bit of effort into connecting our products. And I'll just give you, I guess what I'll say is a little bit been our journey and some of the tips we've learned along the way and are still learning as we go. It's really, as I'm sure many of you have experienced, it's very easy to think about what is possible and the potential for all these things, what I'll call the art of the possible workshops. The challenge and maybe the interesting part of it is trying to take that and actually execute on it and achieve and realize some of that value. So, some of the tips that we've been working through are one tagline that I like saying is, think big, start small, learn fast. So plan with the long-term possibilities of where you want to go. Start with small pilots and iterate quickly. So as you do those pilots, you may learn this didn't work or this isn't going to scale well, and iterate there. Similarly, Norm really hit it on the head when he thought about, well, what is the value? What are the use cases you're trying to hit there? So we similarly thought a lot about use cases. And as Norm said, there's a lot of data that can be generated from IoT, but how are you making sense of that data? And most importantly, we knew that both LTech and our customers want an actionable insight. And very often they want action. What can LTech do to make our customers' lives easier? So sometimes we are the consumers of our data that can also be directed towards the customer. And we learned a lot there. We broke our use cases into 3 categories: safety, productivity, equipment health. Within those categories, there's a lot of overlap with what Norm was sharing about predictive diagnostics, and getting to the holy grail of fixing something before it actually breaks. And we learned a lot from Caterpillar and especially John Deere. We had some connections there where we connected and talked with them to understand their journey. There's a lot of links in the chain when it comes to, as soon as we have, it was one thing to connect our factories. When we're connecting our products, there's a lot of data privacy and a lot of legal elements to navigate. And given that's an ever evolving landscape, given European laws and recent California laws. So really making sure that we're playing well there and making sure that we're involving our customers has been crucial. Most of the time, our customers are absolutely interested in innovating with us. And I'll echo one thing Norm said. He used the term buy or build. Similarly, we had to decide where do we partner versus where do we build from scratch. And we have our strengths, and we would partner with tech companies, Amazon and others where it makes sense. But many times we came to the same conclusion that we built because there were certain things that we needed that just weren't available off the shelf. And so we built a lot of our systems from scratch and are learning through that process. And in general, I'll just echo that. As I've been getting into the weeds of this, it's something that says easy and does hard, meaning that it's easy to talk about the potential. It's challenging and interesting to try to achieve that potential. And as I've been working with companies, it's been good to compare notes and see where we're succeeding and where we all are learning to grow there.
Speaking to myself as often as on mute. Thank you, Mitch. I like this sequence of think big, start small, and learn fast, and also the partnership that you've developed both with the vendors, the technology provider, or those who can provide certain bricks of the technology, but still not necessarily as a complete turnkey solution, off-the-shelf solution, but also adding your own glue at the very least, if not development, and also the partnership with your own customers, right? To make sure that the way that you're integrating IoT also will add value to the customers, and it's a central topic in operational excellence, in the lean manufacturing, Kaizen spirit as well. So great points there. Can you just maybe just so we can have a sense of how does IoT add value to like trucks, I guess,
Sure.
Tell us
Yeah.
all this for and from the user perspective. Again, whether someone is using your trucks or not, it's interesting to have a sense of how they should see equipment that comes with IoT, or adding IoT features in equipment versus not having that IoT.
Sure, great. Yeah, so Eltec, we make a particular electrical hybrid product that many of our utility customers are finding valuable. And along with that product, we've now released a whole connected package, a digital product, a dashboard that goes with that product. And so we find customers who are using that product can then gather the information of, well, when was this product operating off a battery instead of idling and creating carbon dioxide and nitrous oxide emissions. Once they have that data, they can show internally how they've saved money on fuel costs, but they also can go to the government and say, well, we were operating this hybrid product in this environmentally disadvantaged areas, and they know that because of both the operation of the battery, that data coming back, but also the perimeter, the geofence around, okay, this particular area, for example, Long Beach, California, we're operating there, and so we now qualify for these tax credits. So that's been a popular thing for our customers, and given the Edison Electrical Institute trends, that's becoming more and more popular from our customers to buy that product, both for its ability to reduce emissions and be productive, be efficient, but also now the fact that you can measure that and show internally the value that you created there.
Great, yeah. So definitely totally like an innovative manner, like just out of the blue, creating value that's not even like directly connected to the operations, but creates value for the organization and for the environment. Great, thank you, Mitch. Hector, so you bring actually. I'm going to come back to you, John, in a second. So actually, you bring 20 years of project development engineering. You've managed facilities across multiple countries for lean transformation projects, automation. So, what's your perspective on IoT? It's more directly from the user end, right? You're sitting in a factory and you've implemented automation, system optimization, and so on. What's your take on all this?
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity again. Echoing on the messages from our previous panelists. Thank you for the opportunity of talking to you today, guys. So in terms of your question there, my experience working on a deployment of enterprise architecture initiative, you know, the intent of that big enterprise architecture initiative was to consolidate all of our corporate big data. So basically, you know, making sure that we had a way to standardize and store all of our data coming from all the operations. Imagine the amount of data that we were actually capturing and the amount of effort to actually influence all the processes and the people to be able to actually buy into the new ideas and how we could actually improve the business, right? So now, at that point, IoT, the data coming from IoT was actually relatively small. I'm talking about 3-4 years ago. The portion of the data coming from IoT was relatively small. However, though, our data experts at that time were fully aware and predicting that the IoT data was going to actually grow significantly as a function of the development of the technology. So now, in terms of a few points, a few big learnings for us was making sure that the technology is not driving the whole initiative, that we don't fall in love with technology, but we actually leverage technology, using technology to actually have people develop their capabilities. And when I talk about developing capabilities, as Norman mentioned before, is having a very good understanding of, a better understanding of the processes, of the physical processes. Like, for example, having descriptive analytics that allows us to actually go into predictive analytics, and having people actually involved in the process of understanding what technology can do and improving I would say the organizational capability is the key, guys, when it comes to implementation of these IoT projects. Just collecting data is not just a matter of having a huge amount of data, but how do we use the data that we collect from IoT to actually add value to the customers? How do we actually make sure that people improve their competencies as a result of having all this data? These are strategic questions, guys, that will allow you to get most value from IoT and make it sustainable. So if you want to make it sustainable, you want to make sure that the people are really involved. The people that are using the technology, designing the technology, are working in big collaboration with the people using it on the ground. I like what John mentioned there. John mentioned that listen to the client's needs. Basically, listening to the client needs will allow you to actually customize the data analytics, will allow you to actually come up with very smart solutions rather than coming up with just the most beautiful technical solution. So that's one of the learnings there. It's not about coming up with the most beautiful technical solution. It's about coming up with the most practical and the solution that meets the needs of the customers.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And by the way, I'm showing on the screen right now a kind of a diagram that represents your thought process. So the one actually I think that you just described, and it probably would take a whole webinar. That might you're just giving me an idea actually about perhaps a future webinar on how to a certain path from the perspective of someone who's been sitting in managing and optimizing a factory like you, or factories like you have. Yeah, exactly, Jabril. And I mean, the key point of this slide, guys, is to make sure that you are building organizational capability. And what I mean by organizational capability is actually offering to the clients or the customers something that your competitors are unable to offer because they haven't developed that capability. And remember that just having the technology doesn't give you a sustainable capability. What's going to give you sustainable capability, guys, is actually the ability of your people to use the technology, learn from it, and add value from that learning. So that's the key point I want to make sure that we all take into account, guys, when it comes to IoT or any other technology that we implement. Great, excellent. I like the don't fall in love with technology, and as a technology enthusiast, innovation enthusiast, I probably should have heard your advice a long time ago. It can lead you to really get married with a specific technology, if I could say, and forget maybe the bigger picture that happens within a competitive environment as well. And it's good to take one or several steps back and think about the whole strategy. So great point, and we'll again, we'll have follow-up webinars, and hopefully we can actually walk through the steps further. So Ruby, so you are a relatively recent graduate from an engineering school in management of technology, even specifically, and you've just joined, well, more or less recently as well, the 7th largest utility in the United States, Con Edison. So as I mentioned, in energy efficiency, which we just heard, I think, from Mitch, that there's interesting ways that you can even leverage IoT for that. But what's interesting also is that there is a whole generation change in corporate America, and I guess corporate worldwide, which is the millennials coming to the job market, actually more than coming, reaching the point where, you know, the management point, the up and coming bright careers and this is the first generation that's you are part of, entirely grown into technology. So I think that combined with this new wave of technologies that I think, like all the other panelists mentioned, even a few years ago, 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago, did not even exist yet, or are not ready for industrial scale use. That two combined are probably going to create dramatic changes. And so what's your perspective on IoT and on this these points, and more generally the not just the generation change, but I guess transformation, digital transformation. And I know you have a poll, by the way, a question. So while with your permission, while you start the poll.
Okay, thank you, Jabril. It's hard not to say Professor Benzedrine. I did have Jabril for 3 classes in my college career, and they really opened my mind to innovation management, making sense of how ideas can come to life, and I really got to explore a brilliant side to business. So thank you for including me here today. Again, as a recent graduate, if I were to have answered that poll about where I fit in all of this, it is my colleagues training me. Really, there's a lot of knowledge transfer right now. And to Hector's point about knowing what we're using technology for, I want, as someone who's new to the field, just new to a full-time job in general, to have an intrinsic interest in tech and in helping people. My opinion about the generational transition that's going to happen, namely with millennials really taking over numbers wise in the workforce, I want to see more cross-generational just understanding of values. I think my dad took me to computer graphics conferences growing up, and he's a part of Gen X, and I saw his generation do the work, a lot of the work that now my generation is benefiting from, and I think 3 things. Education is very important, focused education, in particular in lanes like data science, or I value arts education still, and with an increasing number of startups and of people really their visions being fueled, particularly like millennials, Gen Zs, I do see that consolidation of all of these efforts is necessary, and that comes with a loss of ego and a real investment in the field and in the industry that we're in. So say if this helps level set, I wanted to see the generational breakdown of everyone here. Let me check the answers. So I'm not making any assumptions.
Let me actually, I'm going to show the results right now. So
okay, awesome. We're 50% millennials.
Yeah, okay. We didn't have like the 70-80% answers, but still, I think it's representing.
So pairing this with the statistic that some of us are considering IoT, some of us are still figuring out, I'd leave you with this, and this is what I'm thinking, being new to a publicly regulated utility company, and every day wondering, we're using these processes, I'm learning these tools, but what is this serving? What is this for? I care about the community. I'm growing up with these values for being socially responsible. Is the work I'm doing that? So I leave you with these things. One thought being, talk with, say, experts that are around you, especially those in Gen X and older, to understand how, like, the foundations of particular industries, mainly manufacturing, there's foundation there, there's history to appreciate. Secondly, being connected with Mitch's mantra, starting small, especially with how attractive it could be to really go for your own startup and your own ideas. Starting small by contributing to a larger picture, and from there, seeing if there's a problem you can achieve with the subject matter experts on that larger picture. And eventually, if something breaks off, or if it makes sense to have a partnership with the bigger company, start a startup. And I'm speaking from again, class experience, from observation, from appreciation, and really learning from people like you that I'm honored to be on this panel with. And then the last thing I'd leave everyone with is I'm recalling a thought from Nietzsche, philosopher. I really like thinking about society in those ways. And he mentions that when we lose the struggle, we lose the progress. And that connected with some people doing a lot of work to create automated, technologically capable things, IoT things, and then those who are using them and potentially mechanizing their actions. So think about ways to bring in the public and their brains and the community and their abilities, regardless of socioeconomic status, and so that we can still be working and finding value in all of this amazing analysis and big data. And yeah, I think have conversations with younger colleagues, with your analysts, with your associates, with interns. When I was an intern, I loved just talking, learning, sharing, and you never know what new perspectives could come about from that. So thank you, Jabril. I'm learning so much from this panel already. So.
Excellent. Yeah, same here. And as always, it's important to mention Ruby was in my class at NYU Tandon. Obviously, one of the brightest of the brightest. That's why she's on the panel. And I like this quotations, many of them. I like also the connection between arts education and then linking that directly to innovation and the startup community and this up and coming generation again who are entrepreneurial in a sense, and they may go to startups and create technology that may then benefit larger companies or enter larger companies like you have, but still with that same spirit. And I think that would be a shame for larger companies not to take advantage of that. It's like a fresh air, and that can help really identify new opportunities, new ideas of how to create value, including with IoT. It's true that the reverse mentoring also is very interesting. Again, in the context of digitalization and IoT, I guess, I don't know if that's exactly what you meant, but one of the immediate next steps for some of our audience could be to go and reach out to members of the millennial generation who are, and actually even the even younger generation who are just joining and engaging in conversations about IoT and digitalization. So so John, last, I want to leave some time for Q&A. So everyone, you can go ahead and start writing your questions. I know we have some already. Now, just a question regarding all these companies that may be on the listeners here and are dealing with older equipment. I know, for example, one of our consulting partners is currently taking care of trying to renovate a factory that I think is like more than 50 years or more, I think from the 1950s. So how do you handle IoT and digitalization in a factory that has this legacy equipment, like you say? And you have to change all the equipment, or how do you embrace IoT in that situation?
Well, I get this a lot. More than not, when you meet with a manufacturer that has a good reputation, it's been in business for a number of years, they're going to have legacy equipment. And everybody understands the burden of CapEx, what that means, what that entails. It feeds on itself. So I often talk to these people about, listen, don't worry about your legacy machines. The industry is smart enough to make something available to help you. And so what we've used over the years is, and I'm not going to reveal the name of the purveyor. There's several people in the market that make it, but it's basically a box, a very inexpensive piece of machinery that goes on the back of a legacy machine, and you can run the Ethernet cables from that machine right out and get the data that way. So even if you have a legacy machine, it shouldn't be a roadblock to getting real-time data, to establish the integrity of the data. The vendors in the market have even gone so far through a medium called MT Connect, which is an industry standard for this type of data access. They make it available wirelessly now. So you can take a legacy machine and work around it very easily, because there is no, you're not going to tell somebody, okay, you've got to get rid of all your machines on the shop floor in order to make a digital transformation. That's an unrealistic request. So we've come up with ways to facilitate the accessing of data with those older machines.
Great. Okay, so that also serves as a segue to probably a future webinar where we could try to show some of these technologies available to help deploy IoT. I think we have a picture here that shows.
Right. That's a pic. Can you show that? Yeah. So that I sent that to Jeff Leo. That's an example of what we're talking about. These are boxes with it has all the capacity to read the data in your machines. And yeah, that's what it looks like. And these are very inexpensive add-ons to your technology, under $1,000 in general for each box. And there are different vendors, and of course you can obviously find the one that suits you the best. But it's a great way to keep people moving forward, so to speak.
Yeah, excellent. All right, very good. Thank you, John. And now we have still some time for Q&A. As promised, we'll try to let everyone go at 4 p.m. We have a first question regarding cybersecurity, actually, again. So it's 60% of organizations that have implemented IoT have experienced a sort of cybersecurity incident. There's an average of 5,000 cyber attacks. I think, I don't know if it's per year or per month, but that's still a lot on IoT devices. Like an average IoT device has a lot of attempts at cybersecurity breach. So the question is, how can companies take advantage of all these operational excellence or operational efficiency benefits without risking cybersecurity issues? And one additional point is that the IEEE Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers mentions blockchain IoT, for example, as being a solid option to handle IoT. But just a question to the panel, I guess, how important and how can companies engage with IoT without taking risks or with limiting? And I know that one of the panelists has already, I think, John, you mentioned that you have to uphold certain standards, especially in some sectors like defense, That being said, I believe we heard recently a company like Konica Minolta, I think, going down for 1 week. Garmin, the GPS manufacturer, for 3 days. I don't know if that was directly related to IoT cybersecurity, but generally they can be disruptive. So I'm sure on our listeners, some of them may not be in the defense sector and worried about whether they're going to be using technology that's strong enough. So that's kind of, I'm building on a question here that was related to cybersecurity. Any comments, anyone? What came up in your discussions? How you've addressed that?
I'll take one point here, not to interrupt the others, but just when I have discussions with manufacturers about so how do you feel about hosting your data in the cloud? And some manufacturers, let's talk about automotive, for example. So we don't get into the aero defense world because that we've already talked about. Some manufacturers are, saying, well, on-prem. So we go with the on-prem solution. But more and more, we see manufacturers have confidence in the integrity of the cloud, whether it's Amazon or Azure, whatever you're using. And I think it's a question that I always advise my clients to let's have a discussion with the cloud host, and get some, what can you show us to make us feel comfortable putting our data in the cloud? And if they come back after that discussion or several discussions and say, nope, we're going to do it on-prem, fine. It shouldn't be a block to the digital transformation, whether it's in the cloud or not. It's becoming an option, a more readily accessible and acceptable option.
Got it. Thank you. So unless another panelist wants to, you could think about if any of you, if you have a comment on this, but in the meantime, I'll tell you one of the next questions. So there was a mention regarding the MES being, I guess, I don't know if you mentioned that it's dead, but it's perhaps not the only concern right now because too narrow in scope. And so industrial IoT is getting way more tractions with machine learning, predictive analytics, etc. Is that what you meant? And then behind the door, can MES vendors catch up by adding predictive analytics functionalities? Any thoughts on that? So I guess if MES vendors are getting a little bit old-fashioned, I'm not sure again if that's what you meant, but what kind of innovation could they also develop so that they can catch up and integrate this predictive analytics capabilities? Guess no comment here.
Well, I'll take it then. I'm speaking too much, but one of the things we've discovered in the world today is that if you MES is really the root of the whole discussion, was the root. Today, with the industrial Internet of Things platform availability throughout the industry, it allows us the option of having what we call an open API architecture, which means that it's a seamless transition between your MDC and your feed with the ERP system to something that you may not provide yourself. So you have an open API, you could have a quality guy there, for example. You could have tool data maintenance. The technology exists where you can have a seamless transition. So it's really fabulous what we've been able to do by bringing in partners to supplement our activity.
Great. Okay, so I guess that like you mentioned, it is fabulous, right, to develop these partnerships that you can add more functionalities. And great. I don't see any other questions that I think we can't handle offline since we're reaching the official end of today's webinar. For those who wish to join, or let's say to actually hear about our follow-up webinars, especially an upcoming webinar we have in a couple of weeks, in which we're going to demo some IoT platform, and it's actually a specifically more secure, reliable IoT platform, such as Blockchain IOT. So for those who want to hear about that and hopefully more, we encourage you to join our LinkedIn group, which you see here. It's easy to find, but the title is long. But if you go to LinkedIn/groups/860-5844, 860-5844, please just click request to join, and I'll add you. For those who wish to receive a certificate, a professional development hour certificate, we have a survey at the end of this webinar. As soon as you log off, I believe you're going to see a survey that will ask if you'd like to receive it. And then if you do, then you can fill out a brief questionnaire, because we want your certificates to have value. So it's not just a certificate of attendance. It's once you answer those questions, it documents that you really have taken, some takeaways from the webinar. This is my, I guess, faculty hat here speaking. And also, again, if you're interested in knowing more, there are some questions there that you can answer, and we'll try to make sure that we bring future webinars to help you with the digital transformation. So again, everyone, thank you so much, Hector, John, Mitch, Norm, Ruby, for joining us. Thank you all also for being part of this webinar. Those who are interested also will receive probably a copy of some resources, the full slide deck with some resources, including some brought by our webinar partner, Kalima Systems, about how blockchain can provide security. I know those who ask questions about IoT, blockchain IoT and cybersecurity will be interested in this document here. So thanks for sharing this, Kalima Systems, and there's more details, as well as CESA Systems for being always supporting this, including increasingly some equipment that goes beyond the hardware, but also software to support digital transformation. And I usually walk you through these, but I'll let you review them once you receive the slides. This webinar is part of the CESA Systems Academy, which is both a physical space with more than a showroom. It's like a lab space where hundreds of executives come and practice simple but really powerful methods to improve operations. And if you wish to receive a catalog, feel free to go to the website or connect with me. And finally, this is also part of the Triana Group effort to bring new technologies to companies like yours. So thank you very much, everyone. Again, thank you to the panelists, to the listeners, and I look forward to seeing you in a future webinar. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.